Hello! Today is April 25th, which means we're just 5 days away from the release of my novel Coywolf. And as I said in my last video, I'm going to be doing a little bit of promotion this week. So today I want to share with you a bit more about the content of the book. I'm going to share the opening lines with you, the first paragraph, which introduces us to the main character, Jackson Porter. I'm also going to share about a paragraph each for two of the most important supporting characters in the novel, and then a bit about the magic system in the book, because even though this book is set in the real world, the story is set in a small town that I think a lot of people can relate to. It's a bit of a low fantasy, so there's a magical element to it as well. And I'm going to share a conversation about that magic as we first see it in the book with you guys. So the opening paragraph of the book tells us a bit about Jackson Porter. Here it is. Jackson Porter never missed a day of school, much to the disappointment of his teachers. He didn't come because he liked school. In fact, he hated it. But being at school was better than not being at school. Not being at school meant being alone, bored, hungry, and dealing with his mom and her current boyfriend when they were in town. At least at school, Jackson had breakfast, lunch, and mostly friendly faces. The school year had been in session long enough for Jackson's initial excitement to wear off. Up until the homecoming game, school had at least been interesting. There were lots of new people to see and new rules to break. At this point, though, Jackson's freshman year had become a monotonous routine of classwork, homework, quizzes, clubs, sports, day after day. Jackson would have been content to just come to school each day and do none of those things, which is exactly what he did. So I think a lot of us know a kid like Jackson Porter. I think he's very, I think some of us might have been a kid like Jackson Porter at some point in our lives. And so the story is really about him going from this starting place where his life is not that great to maybe by the end of the story, maybe his life is better, or maybe at least he understands what he needs to do to make his life better or improve his situation. He has a very good friend. He has a best friend named Eglin. And so here's a bit about Eglin. In the seat behind Jackson sat his best friend, Eglin Duffy. Eglin, who made up in height what he lacked in academic prowess, had been inseparable from Jackson since Eglin's second attempt at the third grade. Once Mrs. Harris realized that the two of them would talk even if seated in opposite corners of the room, she decided to place them together, doubling down on her quarantine strategy. At times, however, her strategy backfired. And so Eglin, he's just, I wouldn't even call him like a sidekick for Jackson. It's almost the other way around at times, but they're buddies. They're almost like brothers. But there's another element that comes into this. So the starting place is Jackson and Eglin, but we're still in the first chapter where we're getting introduced to the setting and all of the characters. There's a change to the dynamic. Jackson's head snapped to the right, just as it did any time the door opened. It was always exciting to see who was coming into the classroom unexpectedly, even though it was usually just some student aide delivering a note to Mrs. Harris. Not this time. Into the classroom walked someone new, a girl. Jackson's eyes studied her. She was tall, nowhere near as tall as Eglin, but tall for a girl, and thin. Her hair was thin as well, once dyed purple, but presently faded to a shade of utter indifference. She had an industrial piercing in one ear and several more piercings in the other, plus one in her eyebrow. If Jackson had a specific type of girl that he was interested in, she wouldn't be it. But knowing from experience that beggars and choosers exist in two distinct social classes, Jackson was energized by the new girl's presence. His posture changed instantly without his realizing it. Instead of slouching back in his seat, he sat straight up with his shoulders back. Instead of spreading his legs comfortably, he tucked them neatly under his desk. Instead of letting his arms flop at his sides, he folded them smartly in front of him. Mrs. Harris took the paper the girl had handed over then announced, "Class, this is Diana Shepherd. She's going to be joining us." Putting 2 and 2 together for the first time all year, Jackson realized happily that the only free desk in the entire classroom sat directly in front of him. His eyes widened and his mind buzzed. So Diana comes in, and so we can see a bit already. There's going to be a shift in the relationship between the characters. There's this new element introduced. But as Diana comes in, she brings something else besides her presence into the book. She has this gift, this magical gift, that you'll have to see why. She chooses to share it with Jackson. And after she shares it the first time, he's sort of shocked. He doesn't really understand what's happening. And he starts to ask her about it. And here's a bit of their conversation. I'm not going to go through the whole thing and introduce and explain all of it down to the nitty-gritty, but just to get a taste of it, here's a conversation between Jackson and Diana after they first share this spark, this gift. "Jesus, really?" Jackson continued the conversation. "What was that anyway? How'd you see my imagination?" "It wasn't your imagination, Porter. You were inside that manta ray's mind, looking out. You were experiencing his life for real." "You're nuts. That ain't possible." "Think about what you saw and what you felt. You really don't believe that it was real? Didn't it feel real to you?" "Yeah, it did, but how? It's impossible." "Not impossible. Magic." "Oh, God!" Jackson rolled his eyes. If Diana weren't a girl, he would have lost his patience by now. As it was, though, he remained patient only because he was trying to make the story he told Eglin a reality. "You ain't one of them devil worshippers, are you? Look like you could be." "No, Porter, I'm not a devil worshipper." And I'll stop there. So she has this gift. She lets Jackson see the world through the eyes of an animal. And over the course of the book, we see how that sort of experience, plus all these other things going on in his life, sort of help him on his personal journey of growth and maybe change him. Maybe he becomes somebody a little bit different by the end. But this video has gone on pretty long. I'll have at least one more where I'm going to answer some frequently asked questions that have been given to me, that have been asked from some friends and from some students and other people. But again, we're 5 days away. I'll put the link to my Amazon page one more time. You can go there right now and order the ebook if you want to, or on April 30th, you can order the paperback version. Thank you for listening, and I will talk to you again soon.